Skinny Hardaway 7T back with another EP. Y'all do your boy a favor, y'all smash that like button for your boy when you roll on in. Whether you're here for a good time or a long time, greatly appreciate you sliding through. If it's your first time, do your boy a solid. Don't make it your last time. Hit that subscription button as well when you roll on in. I ain't gonna keep too much of y'all time with this here EP. Just want to have a conversation with y'all real quick. Gary Russell, Mr. Gary Russell, right? I respect Mr. Gary Russell. Mr. Gary Russell is one of the better boxers, especially in and around his weight class, right? So when he speak, I do listen. Mr. Gary Russell. Sometimes he be joning right, and then a lot of times he be talking they're real, but all the time he be talking that real, right? Because he always say what he feel, right? So Mr. Gary Russell has some interesting thoughts on Earl Spence Jr. And a couple of people have some interesting thoughts on Earl Spence in the Terrence Bud Crawford fight, right? Mr. Gary Russell being one, and also Jermell Charlo being another. I'm gonna talk about both today. This is the Mr. Gary Russell portion of the show. I mean of Southern T, right? But I digress. Mr. Gary Russell has some interesting, nonetheless, things to say about what he think about Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford, and he was leaning towards it being something medically wrong with Errol Spence. You see in the title, it says Mr. Gary Russell, something was wrong with Spence, right? Mr. Gary Russell is leaning towards. He feels like just him personally, right? He feels like these are his thoughts, right? He feels like something may have medically been wrong with Smith. Neuro, neuro, neuro what's the word to use? Uh, Neurologically, right? It might have been some neurologically wrong with Smith. You know what I mean? Neurologically, something with his eyes, right? That's just a fancy way of saying it was something wrong with his eyes. Neurologically wrong with Spence, right? Now, I've heard a couple people say that. I personally, you know, don't think is that deep, right? I think it's an issue of like a scar tissue thing, right? MMA fighters have it, common thing in combat sports in general, right? MMA fighters have it, boxers have it. I do think Earl Spence's may have came from a car wreck, not necessarily boxing, right? So that may be a different conversation from the other day, right? I do think the scar tissue, right, came from the car wreck, but I think it's a scar tissue issue, not necessarily a neuro a neuro a neurologically issue. God damn it, neurologically. He feel like something neurologically was wrong with him. I don't think it's a neurological issue. You know what I mean? I think it's a scar tissue. That word fucking me up right now. Neurologically. I don't think it was a neurologic issue, right? That's the word I'm looking for. Neurologic, right? I don't think it was a neurologic issue. I think it was a scar tissue issue, right? But let's see what Mr. Gary Russell had to say. Uh, Mr. Gary Russell doesn't. This article is coming from a boxing scene, by the way. I should add. Shout out my guy MP. Shout out my guy Charles Granger. Appreciate y'all folks sliding through this jump. My guy Tay D was here on the early session. Was good, Tay D. Let me go and get into it so I don't waste too much of y'all time. Gary Russell doesn't keep up with the sport he's involved in, but even he was interested in seeing how Errol Spence Jr. versus Terrence Crawford would play out before they officially swapped fists in the center of the ring. Russell was expecting an all-out war and a terrific fight overall. In the end, however, the former WBC featherweight champion was convinced that Spence would be a little too big and strong for the smaller Crawford. First round not included, Crawford uh, turned what many believe was a 50-50 showdown into one-way traffic. Normally sturdy, Spence hit the deck on three occasions, including twice in the seventh. From the comfort of his couch, Russell moved closer and closer to his television and self-belief. With Crawford barely breaking a sweat, the Maryland native had no problem giving him his credit. With that being said, something about Spence's performance just didn't sit right with Gary Russell. Gary Russell said, I feel like something was wrong with Earl going into that fight. Told Boxing Scene, I don't think I knew. I don't know what it could have been. I think neurologically he was off, right? He said, I think something neurologically was off. That's what Mr. Gary Russell said. I don't know what it could have been. I think something neurologically was off. Yeah, facts, Demetrius. I feel like something was wrong. The more I say, it become easier. It become easier. I feel like something was wrong with Earl going into the fight. Russell told Boxing, I don't know what it could have been. I think something neurologically was off. He said the chatter around Spence is exactly what Russell is alluding to, but his credit, he refused to give a single excuse of what took place. Some, nevertheless, have pointed to Spence's issues outside of the ring over the years. 2019, the former welterweight champion was involved in a horrific car wreck. In 2022, Spence, 28-1, was forced to undergo surgery to repair a torn and detached retina. Those physical problems, however, didn't stop Spence from taking care of business against Danny Garcia and stopping Yordenis Ugas in back-to-back bouts. Still, while he looked spectacular in those outings, Russell isn't backing off the notion that something wasn't right heading into the fight of his life. He said, yeah, he could have came back with Danny and Ugas, but something was off when he fought Terrence Crawford. You know what I mean? So Gary Russell is one of the Gary Russell. What's good, Demetrius? Shout out my guy Demetrius, right? Gary Russell. It's been a long time no see too, Demetrius. Gary Russell is one of those people who feel like it was a neurological issue. Feel like it was a neurological issue going on. I personally think it was a scar tissue issue, going on. But I do think it came from the car wreck. I don't think a scar tissue issue came from the boxing ring because he don't take a whole lot of punishment outside of that Terrence Crawford fight, right? But I do think it was a scar tissue issue. Some people feel it was an eye issue, a medical issue, neurological issue, or you know what I mean. But whatever it was, Spence didn't make no excuses, right? So I ain't gonna make no excuses. But I do want to talk about one more thing, what Jermell Charlo had to say. We gonna wrap about that in a minute, right? We gonna wrap about what Jermell Charlo had to say because he said something interesting. Jermell Charlo said he feel like Bud Crawford hit Errol Spence with a whole lot of illegal blows. You know what I mean? So we gonna have a conversation about that in about 30 minutes, 20 minutes. So make sure y'all roll on back around. But I ain't gonna hold up too much of y'all time with this. Skin Hardaway said the T. This ain't the past. This ain't the future. Just the present. This how we rocking. And I'm out.